Kadosh Boker Tov, Masechet Yevamot Daf Yudzayin Amud Aleph. We're going to finish the perek now, and we just mentioned that Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana Vayanchem Bachlach Uvchavor Ne'al Gozan Ve'are Madai. So it says over here that the king of Assyria, he sent the 10 tribes to Lachlach, right, and Chabor, right, and so these are all these different places. So it says Lachlach is Halzon. Havor, that's the name of a river actually. Havor is Hadiab. Hadiab is Edieben, Hadiabin, which is basically found in it says over here, it's in the north of Iraq of today. Right? Nehar Gozan is Ginzak. Aremadai, Zohamadan, Chavrotea, and all the cities beside it. The Amnilan, some people say it's Nihar in Chavrotea. Chavrotea man, who are the cities beside it? So Shmuel, Kerach, Mushchechit, Kevdom Kaya. Rabbi Yochanan vekulan lepsul. Now all of these things is because you're all pasul to get married to these people. So it's coming out that all the Seret HaShvatim, you cannot really get married to them. Okay? So that's what that means the 10 lost tribes. Yeah, you can't get married to them. That's what we're saying now. The 10 lost tribes. Okay? Ki amnita kemed Shmuel. So when they said this in front of Shmuel, Amali comes and he tells me, Bincha ba mina Yisraelit, if right now the father is a goy and he gets married to a Jew. So one more time, father goy, child Jew. Karui bincha is called your child. Right? Why is it called your child? Which means that it's a Jew. Because we go after the mother. Yeah? Ve'em bincha ba mina ovedet kochavim, karui bincha. But a child. Which means that he says, Ve'em bincha ba mina ovedet kochavim, karui bincha. Ela bina. A child from a Jew to a Goya, to a non-Jew, since the mother was a Goya, so therefore it's not considered your child. It's her child, and therefore the child is a Goy. So according to this, if right now a man came from a Seret HaShvatim and he got married to a Goya, so their children are Goyim, they're not Yisraelim. So they're not Yisraelim, which means that they're not Mamzerim. So therefore, what's the problem? Yeah? So says the Gemara, 1 second, Vayika Banot, you have girls. The Seret HaShvatim that were exiled were not only men, they were girls. So if there were girls, those girls that went to exile, if they went and they got married to Goyim, those children are considered Mamzerim. Right? Why? Because even though, right, we just said that an Eved or a Goy that goes with the Bat Yisrael, the child is considered a Mamzer. And therefore we said that you can't get married to them. This is not the Lacha, but this is what they're paskin. This is what the Gemara is saying. So says the Gemara, V'hama Ravina says, Shema mina, we learn from here. Ben bitcha ba mina oved kochavim kore bincha. That even right now, right, a grandchild, which is coming from the mother that she's Jewish, she's considered your child. So therefore, the women of the Seret HaShvatim that got married to the oved kochavim, right? So he says, we still have a chashash that maybe be'emet, it's considered, right, a mamzer. And therefore, you cannot get married to anybody from the 10 Shvatim. So answers the Gemara, Gemire, we have a Kabbalah, we have a tradition, remember, right? Gemire is like Gemara Gemire, remember by Rabbi Yehu? He says that what? We have a tradition. What is the tradition? The tradition is the Benata De'ahu Dara, that the Banot, the girls from that generation, Itztaruye Itztaru. Right? What does that mean? It means that they were Nifkeu, which means that their uterus, right, was destroyed because of the inui of the derech, right? Which means that the fact that they were going to exile and all the toil going to the exile, they became barren, became sterile, okay? And therefore, why? Because therefore, their uterus was not able to receive the semen in order to become pregnant. So therefore, we have like a Kabbalah that the girls of the Seret HaShvatim were not able to become pregnant. So therefore, we don't have this concept that maybe Be'emet, there was the Goy that had relations with the Jewish girl, and then he had children. Because the Jewish woman didn't have children then. That's it. It lost out. So then what did you have? The boys. But if the boys, so then the children are Goyim. They're not Jews. So therefore, there's no Mamzerim. So therefore, what is the entire concept here? Ika de'amri. There are those that say, Ki amrita kameh de Shmuel. Right? When I said these words of Rabbi Aravasi in front of Shmuel, Amarli, he said, Lo zaz misham, the Chachamim did not move from there, Ad she'asaum goyim gemurim, until they made them 100% goyim. And they came and they made them 100% goyim. Shneimar, but it says in a pasuk, Ba'ashem bagadu, ki banim zarim yaladu. They came and they rebelled against Hashem. And therefore it says, banim zarim. What does it mean, banim zarim? From the fact that the Torah was calling them, right, this is an Oshea, the fact that it's calling them banim zarim, it means that they were going to be considered like goyim. Okay? Yati Rav Yosef achored Rav Kahana, Yati Rav Kahana kamed Rav Yehuda. Yati v'kama. So imagine, Rav Yosef is sitting behind Rav Kahana, and he's sitting, right, Yati Rav Kahana, Rav Kahana was sitting in front of Rav Yehuda. Yati v'kama, and they were coming and sitting and saying, right, the following. Okay? He says, Atidim Yisrael davde yamatova. Yeah, yamatova, he says over here, ki charbe tarmod. In the future, the Jews are going to make a Yom Tov when Tarmod is going to be destroyed. Okay? So the city Tarmod is going to be destroyed, and then what happens is, we're going to come and we're going to make a big simcha. So ask the Gemara, but it was destroyed. What are you talking about? It was already destroyed. So he says, Ravashi says, no. Hainu Tarmod, Hainu Tamod. Sorry, and so the Gemara, Hai Tamod Avai. Right? Tamod. It didn't, we just said that Bnei Yisrael are going to make a simcha when Tarmod is going to be destroyed. So he said, it's destroyed. No, he says Tamod is destroyed. It's a different city. It's not Tarmod. Right? It was missing the resh. Vashi comes and he says, no, it's the same thing. Hainu Tarmod, Hainu Tamod. It's the exact same city. Ikapule udikapal. What does that mean? But it's machpila etzma. It just regenerates. How does it regenerate? Chariv me'agisa, otiv me'agisa. When it's destroyed from one part, it builds from the next part. The Chariv Ma'agisa, and if it's going to be destroyed from that part, Otiv Ma'agisa, it's going to be built from the next part. Which means that what happens is that all of a sudden you have a city, and it's going to be destroyed, but it's not true, because over here, on this side, it's being destroyed, and now all of a sudden they're building themselves on this side. If this side is going to be destroyed, so then they start building themselves here. So they're always regenerating. So it's not that the entire city was destroyed. Right, because no matter what you're destroying, they're always building another part, right? You're always rebuilding in another part. Okay? Yativ Rav Amnuna kamed Ula. So Rav Amnuna is sitting in front of Ula. Ekahavi b'shmata, and he was asking on that what he learned from Ula. Amar, so Ula comes, right? And he says, so imagine, Ula is giving the shiur, and Rav Amnuna is asking a lot of questions on Ula. So what happens? Ula comes and he tells Rav Amnuna, Ma gavra, ma gavra. Look how great this guy is. Yeah. So again, Ula is saying about Rav Amnuna that keeps on asking questions in a shiur. Look how great the guy is. He loved the Arpanya mate. If it wasn't for the fact that his city was from Arpanya. Now why? Because if you remember, Arpanya was one of the cities that we mentioned before, right? That they were not miuchas. They don't have good genealogy. So he comes and he says, look what a great guy this guy is, if he didn't come from Arpanya. Yeah, what happens? Ichsif. He was embarrassed. Because right now, what Ula is coming and telling everybody is that Ki'ilu Rav Amnuna, he's asking good questions, but he's not miuchas. Right? He has no good genealogy. So Amale, all of a sudden comes Ula, and he says to Rav Amnuna, Kesef kulgalta lecha yahaft. Where do you pay your taxes? Yeah, where do you pay your taxes? So Amarle, he says, Lefum Nahara. I don't pay them to Arpanya, I pay them to Pum Nahara. So Amarle, he told them, Imken mi Pum Nahara. So okay. So therefore, you're from Pum Nahara. You don't have to be embarrassed. It's okay. Right? So what does that mean? So here in the footnote, he actually brings down, right, something incredible. It says, this is the Or Letzion, the Rabben Zion Bashaul, and others as well. Basically, what happens is they come and they say something incredible. At the beginning, right, Rav Ula comes and he told Rav Amnuna, you're a great person, but basically you're not miuchas. Yeah, what does that mean? He was trying to tell everybody, by the way, everyone has to know that Rav Amnuna, even though he's a big rabbi, right, you shouldn't get married to him, right, or to his children. Why? He doesn't have a good genealogy, right? There's no yichus there. So what happened is that he got embarrassed. When a person gets embarrassed, that's a sign that there's no psul in him. There's no psul, there's no defect in him. Because remember, if a person's a mamzer, he's chutzpan, right? He's got audacity. Which one? I'm trying to say the concept of mamzerut. Again, we're always trying to understand that maybe there's mamzerut here. A mamzer has audacity, they have chutzpah. How do you know they have chutzpah? Because the action that the parents did was chutzpah, was an action of chutzpah. Somebody comes and they go with a married woman, right? That means they had audacity. The married woman had the audacity, right? That she rebelled against her husband. And also the guy has audacity. So because of that, the children, they have the audacity. Okay, they have a lot of chutzpah. The second that he said that, right, he thought that there was a psul in Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna comes from Arpanya, and he's got this type of audacity that he's asking so much. All of a sudden, he realizes that he got embarrassed. Right? Why? He said that he came from Arpanya. Now, if he was a mamzer, he has audacity. He doesn't get embarrassed. The fact that he was ichsif, that's a proof that be'emet he was kasher. So all of a sudden he comes, and now Ula saves the day. And he asks him, one second, right? This guy just got embarrassed. He's not a mamzer. Where do you pay taxes to? So he went and he told him, I pay taxes to Pumnara. I don't pay taxes to Harpanya. Right? That's like if somebody's going to ask you, who do you pay taxes to? To Bal Harbor, to Surfside? Or do you pay to Miami-Dade? Or do you pay to Florida? So according to that, he comes and he said, I pay taxes to Pumnara. I don't pay taxes to Harpanya. So he says, okay, so don't worry about it. You come from Harpanya then. You come from Pumnara then. That's where you live. You don't come from thing. You don't have to be embarrassed. Don't worry about it. And that's what he comes and he tells him. So my Harpanya, what is Harpanya? Says the Gemara, Amar bizera har she'akol ponim bo. It's a har, ponim bo. That's Harpanya, har ponim. Har, a mountain that everybody that is pasul, they go to there to get married. That means everyone knows that if there's a defect, you go to get married over there. We also learned from Braita, Kol she'en makir mishpachto v'shivto nifne l'sham. Anybody that does not recognize their family or their shevet, they go to there. What does that mean? Again, you have problems of genealogy. Where do they come from? What happened? They all go there. Why? If there's no yichus, there's nothing there. Yeah? So now he comes and he says, as follows. Yeah? Amar Rava. Rava comes and he says, yeah? Vehi amuka mishol. What does it mean? That it's even worse than Geinam. Remember Sheol, right? Miagon Sheola. Sheol is Geinam, right? One of the names of Geinam. Yeah? Shneimar, as it says in the Pasuk, Miyad Sheol evdem, mimavet egalem. From the hands of Sheol, I'm going to redeem them. From Mavet, right, I will redeem them. Okay? So he comes and he says, yeah, what does this mean now? The ilu psul didu, let leutakanta. But the psul of Bnei Arpanya, they don't have a takana. So psulei de Arpanya comes because of psulei de Meshon. So the psulim of Arpanya comes from the psulim of Meshon. Psulei de Meshon comes because of the psulim of Tarmod. Psulei de Tarmod comes because of the psulim of the Shlomo. That's what people say. Kaba Rabba the Kaba Zuta, doesn't matter whether it's a big kav or a small kav. Migandar ve'azil, right? They continue going down to Geinam, to Sheol. Umisheol letarmod, umitarmod lemeshan, umimeshan learpanya. So it's basically going from the lighter to the more heavier. So therefore, tarmod or the psulim which are less than meshon are less than which are arpanya. Now, even though the mekor of the psulim from meshon come from tarmod, and the psulei yuchasin from arpanya are from mishon, nevertheless, the ma'avar, the transition of the psulei yuchasin from one place to another place is big. So therefore, he says that it's like they're common the psulei yuchasin, right, of where they're actually finding. So we just finished, right, the first chapter of Yevamot. We're starting now Perek Sheni, the second chapter. And it says like this: Keitzad eshet achiv shelo haya beolamo. How exactly is the case of the brother's wife that this brother was not in the world at the time? So Kakadosh, again, it says over here in the Mishnah, Keitzad eshet achiv shelo haya ba'olamo. So we're going to explain as follows. Number one, Reuven and Shimon are brothers. That's over here. Reuven and Shimon are achim with Levi. Reuven has a wife, Esther, and he dies without children. Okay? Now, before Esther is Nitiyabma, Shimon has, right? It says over here, the Shimon nolad od ach, right? Levi, which means like this. Levi was only born, and that's why it's in like the diamond instead of the square. Levi was only born, right, after Reuven's death, but before Shimon comes and gets married to Esther. Okay? V'ibem Shimon at Esther. Now Shimon comes and he does Yibum to Esther. Now Shimon had another wife, her name was Chana, right? And Shimon also dies without children. So now the two women, which is Esther and Chana, they come in front of Levi for Yibum. Now the first one is Asura Levi. Esther is Asura Levi. Why is she Asura Levi? Was Eshet Achiv Shelo Yaba Olamo, which means Levi was never in the world with Reuven, except for sins because he wasn't born yet. So therefore, since Levi was never in the world with Reuven, right, it doesn't work. So it says Ashniya, which is Chana, is Asura Levi because Tzarat Eshet Achiv Shelo Yaba Olamo, because of the Tzara. Okay. So one more time. So the Mishnah said, Ketzad eshet achiv shelo Yevamos, Shnei achim, two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. V'nolad lahem ach Levi. Now, sorry, umet echad mehem. One of them died. That means Reuven died without children. Ve'achad, and after the death of Reuven, nolad lahem od ach. All of a sudden, Levi was born. Ve'achar kach yibem et hashni. Then Shimon comes and he does yibum, right, to eshet achiv, to the Esther over here in our picture. Correct? Yeah, it was Esther. Yeah, they changed the names. Esther. Okay. And then what happens? Umet. Now Shimon dies. Harishona yotza mishum eshet achiv shelo Yevamos. Which means the first wife, which is Esther, goes out. I mean, she becomes tura from Yibum, right? Because of what? Because of eshet achiv shelo Yevamos, that you cannot do Yibum. Shniya, the second wife, which here it's Chana, is mishum tzarata, because of her tzara. Asaba mamar. What happens if Shimon did not do Yibum to Esther, but he did ma'amar? Remember, ma'amar, we already mentioned, it was kiddushin with kesef or with shtar, with the document or with money, but he did not actually do yibum to her, and then vamet, and then he died. So shniya choletzet v'lo midyamemet. You do chalitza and not yibum. Remember that in order to acquire a woman for yibum, you need to do biyah. Biyah is the only thing that acquires by relations. That's the only thing that acquires for yibum. Kesef and shtar, which is basically the regular way that we do kiddushin nowadays, is only midrabanan. It's not real yibum. So if a person came, let's say Shimon comes and he did ma'amar to Esther, which means he went and he gave money and he told her, right? He told her Areya Mekudeshali, whatever it was, with his money. So now it's not considered yibum. It's only midrabanan that he's married to her until he actually has relations with her. And therefore, if he does ma'amar and he still didn't get married to her, and then he dies, the second wife of Shimon, which is Chana, she only does chalitza. She does not do yibum, right? She does not do yibum, but she's not tura legamre either. She has to do chalitza. Why? Because since it was only midrabanan, so therefore, since it was only midrabanan, so we say, okay, fine, you have to do chalitza, and you do not do yibum. Is it a must step? Says now the Gemara as follows. Okay? Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, Man detani rishona lo mishtabesh. Man detani sheniya lo mishtabesh. Which means like this. You have to remember that sometimes we have different gisaot in the Mishnah. So here, in the Mishnah, it says, right, Harishona yotzea mishum eshet achiv shelo Yevamos. V'ashniya mishum tzarata. Who's Rishona and who's Shniya? Who's the first wife and who's the second wife? Do you say that Rishona is Esther? Or do you say, right, is Ishto Rishona? That means his wife was the Rishona and Esther was the Shniya. Is it that you're going for the Yibum or you're going for the wives of Shimon? So that's why the Gemara says, whoever learned to Rishona, because Shelo Yachiv Olamo, he didn't make a mistake. And whoever learned Shniya also didn't make a mistake. Now we're going to explain. Man detani, the one that was gores, Yuzanim ubet, right? 17b. Yeah, the one that says Rishona lo mishtabesh. My Rishona, what does it mean? The first wife. Rishona lo nifila, which was Esther, right? You guys remember the picture? Esther, which is the first wife, because she was wife of Reuven. So when it says Rishona, it doesn't mean Shimon's first wife, because Shimon's wife was Rechana, right? Right? It was really what? It was Esther that was the first wife of falling to Yibum. That's the Rishona. Uman detani shnia, and the one that taught the second one, Lo mishtabesh, she also didn't have a mistake. My shnia, what does it mean the second one? Shnia l'nisuin, the second one that got married to Shimon. Not that fell to the Yibum, but the one that got married to Shimon. So says the Gemara, 1 second. Okay, fine. Now you just explained to me that however you have the Girsa and the Mishnah, it's still going to be okay. So ask the Gemara, Milo askinan di Ibrem ve'achar kach kanas? Are we not talking about the first, there was a Yibum, and only after the Yibum, right, that Shimon first did Yibum to his brother, then he got married? So now, if he got married only after the Yibum, she's Rishona for everything. She's Rishona that fell to Yibum, right? And she's Rishona of marriage as well. Because first Shimon got married to the wife of the brother, and then he got married to another wife. So it says the Gemara, no. Ella, but rather, my shnia, what does it mean, shnia? The kavanah is shnia benisuin, that he got married to her a second time, which means that she was married to Reuven, and then afterwards did Yibum to Shimon. So in that case, even the first wife, Esther, she's also shnia. Not because she fell to Shimon first, but she's second because she's second towards the brothers, because basically she got married to the second time. Like it was to the second brother. Okay? Now the Gemara is going to ask what Mordechai wanted to know. Yeah? And it's in Devarim. So I'm astonished at the question. Eshet achiv shelo haya be'olamo. Right? Eshet achiv, that was not in the world. Hecha kativa, where is it written in the Torah that you cannot get married to? Right? So it says, right? Amar Rav Yudah Marav. It says in the pasuk, Makra, ki yeshevu achim yachdav. What does it mean yachdav? Shayta lahem yeshiva achat ba'olam, that they live together. Yachdav means together, right? That means they live together in the world. Prat is comes to exclude leshet achim shelo belamo, to the brother to the wife's brother that was not during the time. Why? Yachdav miyuchadim benachala. Yachdav means that it has to be miyuchad in the nachala. Prat le'achiv minahem comes to exclude achim minahem. If you remember the beginning of Yevamot, we went and we said Yibum only applies to brothers from the father and not brothers from the mother. The question is why? Here it's teaching you mefurash from the pasuk. When it says the word yachdav, yachdav means together. That's miyuchad in the nachala. Who inherits? Only the men inherit, and men inherit from the father. They don't inherit from the mother. Is mishpachat em ena kruya mishpacha. Family of the mother are not considered family to do with inheritances, and therefore the brother. Remember, the brother that he does the yibum, he takes full capacity or full rights and ownership over everything of the brother. He not only does he take his wife, he takes a wife, properties, anything that the brother left behind, everything gets transferred to this brother that he's doing the yibum. You understood? So everything goes. So therefore, we're learning two things from yachdav. Number one, yachdav, that they have to live together at the same time, and number two, yachdav, that they have to be miyuchadim benachala. Says the Gemara, Rabba comes and he says, Achi mina'av yalif achva mibnei Yaakov. How do we know that they have to be brothers from the father? We learn agzira shava achva, brotherhood from the children of Yaakov. Why from the children of Yaakov Avinu? Because Yaakov Avinu, they come and they tell Yosef HaTzadik, the children, they tell Yosef, at the time they thought he was a viceroy, right? Shnema sarach anachnu achim bene avinu. We are 12 brothers from our father. Now we know that all the tribes, how many wives were there? Four. There were 4 wives, right? Rachel veLeah, Zilpa, Bila Zilpa. So therefore, what happens is that you had 4 wives. That means they were brothers, they were half brothers, they weren't full brothers. They were brothers from the father, not from the mother. So therefore, the fact that they said that we are 12 brothers, so therefore, that's going to be, we learn Agzera Shava. Male hala mina av velo minaim. Just like over there by Yaakov Avinu, the brothers from the father, not from the mother. Avka mina av velo minaim. So to hear from the brother and not from the mother. Okay. So it says the Gemara. We were by the concept when it says over here, Rabbah comes and he says, Achim mina av, we learned it from a Gzera Shava, Achim achva from Bnei Yaakov. Just like over there, it's from the father and not from the mother. So to here, we're talking about from the father, not from the mother. So ask the Gemara, Beleilaf, why don't we learn achva me'arayot? Meaning, by arayot, is there a difference between brothers from the father or brothers from the mother? There's no difference. By arayot, by immoral relations, doesn't matter whether it's a sister-in-law from the brothers from the father or from the brothers of the mother, it's all the exact same thing. So therefore, just like over there, it's all the exact same thing. Right? Why don't we learn achva from arayot? So answers the Gemara, Danin achim me'achim ve'en danim achim me'achicha. What's written by arayot? It says over there, Ervat eshet achicha lo tegale. So it says achicha, your brother. It doesn't say achim. By Yaakov Avinu, it says, Shnemasar anachnu achim b'nei Avinu. And by Yavam, it says, Ki yeshevu achim yachtav. So we make, so 1 second. We come and we make a Gzera Shava. Achim, just like by Yavam, by Yibum, it's written achim. And by Yaakov Avinu, it's written achim. Right? These are the brothers, right, from the tribes. So therefore, we do achim. The Gemara asks, why don't we do also, right, by arayot? It says there achicha. Says the Gemara, I prefer to learn achim from achim to achicha. Okay? Ask the Gemara, 1 second. My nafkamina. What's a nafkamina? At the end of the day, Tana Dver Rishmael taught the Shava Kohen Uba Kohen Zoi Shiva Zoi Bia, which means that since it has the same term, the same idea behind it, even if it's not exactly the same word, we could still apply the same halachot. So therefore, even though one is written uba and the other one says v'shav, and it's the same concept, I still make a gzera shava. So if I make a gzera shava, so therefore, what's the difference between achim and achicha? Answers the Gemara, hanemile, what are these words? Only in a case where you don't have anything which is compared to it, then I make such a gzera shava, which is uba kohen, the shava kohen. However, though, but if I do have something which is compared to it, and it's much more better to get something which is compared than something which is not compared. Which means, what are we trying to say? If I have a choice to make a gzera shava, and I have achim or achim achicha, we prefer to do achim because it's the exact same. Even though you're right, if I didn't have another achim, I would have used achicha because achicha is like the achim, right? But it's the same concept. But I just prefer to compare things which are similar, right? Apples with apples and not apples with oranges. At the end of the day, an apple and an orange are both a fruit. You're right. If I don't have any other apples, I would compare both of them together. But once I have a case of apples and apples, that's what I'm going to compare them both to. So I have achim and achim, right? And that's what I'm going to come and I'm going to compare them together. So says the Gemara, Beleilaf achva milot. 1 second. Why don't we make a gzera shava achva from Lot? Why? From Lot, it says over there, Tichtiv, ki anashim achim anach. He says we are achim. Now, if you're telling me that you wanted to use achim, yeah? So 1 second, by Lot, it is written achim. Now, what I would have thought to say, I would have thought to say that who was Lot to Avraham Avinu? The nephew. So if it's a nephew, so it comes out either two ways. Here in the footnote, it brings down two ways, whether it's like the Dibrot Moshe, there's Rashi, whether it is that you could do Yibum to your uncle's wife, right? Usually you're not allowed to get married to an aunt. But here, maybe by Met, you're allowed to actually come and get married to your uncle's wife, right? Why? Because it's so if you're learning achim, maybe you're able to do that. No, it says ki anashim achim anachnu. Yeah. So therefore, what? Mistabra mi bnei Yaakov havel lemeilaf. It's more mistaber to learn it from bnei Yaakov, mishum de mufne, because it's extra. Mufne, if you remember, means that it's extra. It was available. It's panui. It's available to make this drasha. Why? Because we could have written in the Torah, Shene Masar Avadecha Bnei Avinu. Why did he have to say Shene Masar Achim? Right? Avadecha Achim Bnei Avinu. Why did it say Achim? Even without Achim, you could have said Bnei Avinu, and that's it. So why did it say Achecha? Right? Achim. So it says Uchti V'Achim. Shmamina lafnui. So this comes to teach you that it's going to be empty in order to make this drasha. So that's what we prefer to learn it from. We prefer to learn it from Bnei Yaakov than to learn it from Lot. But the truth is, if we would have learned it from Lot, it would have been different halachot. But I prefer to learn from Bnei Yaakov because it's extra. So says the Gemara, but now I need to write it in both places. Ve'itzrich lemichtav achim, ve'itzrich lemichtav yachdav. Right? I need to write achim, ki yeshevu achim, anashim achim yachdav. I need to write both. Why? If it was only going to be written achim, havamina, I would have had the havamina leila if we should learn it achva from Lot. So therefore, right? And therefore, you could even do with the uncle's wife, or vice versa, downwards. And if you're going to tell me now it's not mufne, which means that it's not extra, lae, right? It is afnei mufne. Why? Even by Lot, it's also extra. Because there you could have said, right, re'im, right, achim. Why did I have to say achim? Meaning, if you take the pasuk though, if you come and you say the pasuk says, look at the pasuk. Vayomer Avram el Lot, al na tehi miriva beni uvenecha v'nrei v'nrecha, ki anashim achim anachnu. Why did it say achim? It could have told you re'im. We're friends. So with our friends, what are you going to? Shema mina comes to teach you lafnui, that it's extra. So katav rachmana, and therefore maybe I would have learned it from Lot. Katav rachmana yachdav. Therefore, the Torah teaches you yachdav hamyuchadim benachala. Hamyuchadim benachala means that it has to be achim min av, right? Which is basically from the father's side. Because remember, Yerusha only goes from the father's side, not from the mother's side. As I told you before, mishpachat emen kriya mishpacha. So says the Gemara, vi katav rachmana yachdav. And if it would have been only written yachdav, hamvamina, I would have thought to say dimiyachade, right? That it's going to be achim. They have to be miyuchadim legamre be'abba ve'ima, meaning you have to share both father and mother. Meaning, if I would have only said ki yeshevuach anachim, right? Ki yeshevuach anachim yachtav. If it would have been written only yachtav, so I would have thought the yachtav means it has to be full brothers, full siblings to the ibum. That means a half sibling, right? Even from the father, meaning half brothers from the father, it's also not good. That's what I would have thought. So that's why it says sicha. That's why I need it. So says the Gemara, right? How do I know? How do we know this? So he says, how do we know that it has to be fathers from the brother, brothers from the father, and not brothers from the mother? Says the Gemara, yibum benachala tal yamita. Yibum has to do with nachalot, right? The menachala is always mina av velo mina em. Always nachalot are always from the father and not from the mother. Meaning all Yerushot are always comes from the father, not from the mother. And that's why, for example, Benot Tzlov Chad, what was the entire problem? If right now you're going to give it to the girls, and the girls are going to give it to somebody else, you just went and you switched the nachala from Yosef to another shevet. So therefore it's going to be a problem. So therefore, nachalot are always on the man's side. It's always the man that takes nachala and not the woman. So says the Gemara, right? So he says, Itzrich, he comes and he says, but then he went and he told them they had to get married to their own shevet. Yeah, so he comes and he says, Itzrich, you need it. Why do you need it? Because I would have thought to say chidushu, which means that it's a chidush. That it's a chidush, that you're permitting an isur erva. So So I would have thought to say that it has to be miyuchad, that it's also the same father and also the same mother. Tzricha, therefore it has to say achim. Achim is teaching you that it's achim mina av by itself, and you don't even need achim mina em, which means that even if it's going to be a half brother, only from the father's side, it's still going to be good. I don't need both brothers. Meaning, I would have thought, the havamina, and that's what we're saying, I would have thought that it had to be 100% a brother. 100% brother means that you share the same father and you share the same mother. Kamash malan, well, you're going to teach you that know that it's only just the father and you don't need the same mother. Okay? Now I'm going to share with you the screen because again, we're going back to the Shomeret Yavam. So Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, Shomeret Yavam Shemeta, a Shomeret Yavam that dies, mutar be'imah. He is permitted in her mother. So what is the case? Look over here. I have the case over here. Reuven and Shimon and Levi are Gimel Achim. 3 brothers, Achim over here. Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Yeah? Reuven Isha Rachel. So Reuven has a wife called Rachel. Right? Now, Umet Reuven belo banim. Right? And now Reuven dies without children. Okay? V'ishto Rachel nofel lifnei Shimon v'Levi v'Yibum. Now, Rachel falls in front of Shimon and Levi to Yibum. Okay? That means they were both in the world. Remember, we're not talking about Shelo Yabalamon. They were both in the world. So everybody's alive. These are all 3 alive at the same time. Reuven dies. Rachel falls to Shimon and Levi to Yibum. Now what happens is, Shimon comes and he gets married to Leah, her sister, the sister of Rachel. Right? Okay, now this is after Reuven passes away, comes Shimon and he does Kiddushim to Leah, Achota, before getting married to Rachel. So comes Shimon, right? Comes Shimon and he gets married to Leah before anybody does Yibum to Rachel. Rabbi Yehuda Memetera comes. One second. Rabbi Yehuda Memetera says, Yesh zika v'adayin zekuka Rachel l'Shimon v'asura Leah l'Shimon ki hi achot zekukato ולכן עליו להמתין עד שיחלוץ יבם לוי לרחל. And then there the Chachamim are coming and saying, En zika, umutar lo lekonsa, which means like this. What happened was like this. Until now, right, we're talking about, one more time, you have the 3 brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Reuven was married to Rachel. Reuven dies. Now, Rachel falls in front of Shimon and Levi to the Yibum. Before Yibum is done, at all, before Yibum is done, Shimon comes and he does Kiddushin to Leah. He doesn't do Nisuin, which means he doesn't get completely married, but he does Kiddushin. He gives her the ring. Okay, very good, fine. All of a sudden, Rabbi Yehuda Memetera and Chachamim are arguing, is there a Zika or isn't there Zika? Zika means, right, if you want to think about it in Hebrew, what's Zikim in Hebrew?
So,
Zikim are right? Okay, Zikim, right? To connect between each other. So Zikuka or Zika is a kesher, it's a connection. So therefore, there's a machloka between Rabbi Yehuda Memetera and Chachamim. According to Rabbi Yehuda Memetera, there's a Zika to Rachel immediately, which means when Reuven dies, what is the connection between Rachel and Shimon and Levi? There's a Zika, there's a connection, because one of them has to do Yibum or Chalitza. So now, if right now Shimon gets married to Leah, it's not Chal, according to Rabbi Yehuda Memetera. It doesn't hold. Why? Because Shimon is doing Kiddushin to Leah, which is the sister of the woman that he's got a connection to. He has to do Yibum or Chalitza to. So because of that, says Rabbi Yehuda Memetera, since there's a Zika, Shimon is not allowed to get married to Leah because it's a Chot Zekukato. So therefore, he has to wait for Levi. If Levi does Yibum to Rachel, now he's permitted to Leah. Or if Libum does Chalitza to Rachel, now he's allowed to get married to Leah. You understood? So he's according to Rabbi Yehuda Memetera, this woman, right, this Shimon is on a hold. Why is Shimon on a hold? Shimon is on a hold because he's not allowed to do anything until Levi makes his move. Once Levi makes the move, now he can depends on what's going on. Because if Levi does Libum to Rachel, perfect. So now Shimon can continue getting married to Leah. If Levi does Chalitza to Rachel, again he's allowed to get married to Leah. And Chachamim come and they say, En Zika, there's no Zika, umutalo lekonsa, and he's allowed to get married to her. Let me read it inside. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav, says Rav Huna Amar Rav, Shomeret Yavam Shemeta, Shomeret Yavam that dies. Remember, right? Shomeret Yavam, right? That dies. Mutar be'ima. So, right, it says like this. He says, right, it's going to be permitted in the mother. Okay? What does that mean? He comes and he says, he's permitted in the mother. Alma kasavar. So you see from here that what? And zika. There is no zika. What does that mean? you see that according to Shitat, Rav Huna Marav, he comes and he says, right, if right now Shomeret Yavam dies, he's permitted now in the mom. So imagine, you have a Shomeret Yavam. Shomeret Yavam means that she's waiting to do Yibum. In this case, Rachel was waiting to do Yibum. Imagine right now, Rachel dies. Reuven died, and then Rachel dies. So if Rachel dies, right, Shimon is allowed to get married to, here it says the mother, right? But it's also, Achota will be the same thing, Leah. Now why? Because that means, you see from here that Rav Huna holds, En Zika, which means the kesher, the connection, which is between the Yavam and Yivimto, is not the same connection to make it like Mamash Arusato, because if it was Arusato, now it's the mother-in-law, or the sister, and then it's not allowed to. Right? Or the mother-in-law, let's say. So then it's not allowed to. So because of that, we come and we say, there is no zika, there is no connection. So says the Gemara, so why don't you just say it mefurash? Say, halacha is like en zika. Why did you have to come and you have to tell me, Shoveret Yavam Shemeta Mutar Beima, you're permitted to get married to the mother. You understand what happened? Think about what's happening. What's happening is, Reuven got married to Rachel. Right? Reuven dies. Rachel has to fall in front of Shimon. Now, if Rachel dies before Shimon does anything, Shimon's allowed to get married to Rachel's mother. And it's not considered his mother-in-law. Why not? Because Shomeret Yavam Shemeta, there's no zika. If there's no zika, there was no bond yet. If there's no bond, Shimon could come and get married to the mother-in-law. There's no problem. So now says the Gemara, Yihava Marhachi, if Rav Huna would have said that what? That halacha is like kidivre zika. What does that mean exactly? Right? He comes and it says, if right now you're going to come and you're going to tell me that the halacha is en zika, havamina would have thought to say, havamine, right? Hanemile betre. That's only going to be in a concept of two or more brothers. Meaning, if I just come and I tell you a general rule, there's no zika. What would have I thought? I would have thought that if there's two or more brothers, so then there's no zika. Why? Because whoever said that you're going to do the yibum and chalitza, maybe it's your brother, maybe it's somebody else. So because of that, we say en zika. Aval bechal, but if there's only going to be one brother, I would have thought that there is zika. So therefore, I couldn't have taught you the concept of that just en zika. Because I would have thought to say, if I just say en zika, if there's two or more brothers. If there's one brother, there's zika. So I can't say that. So therefore, I brought you the case. So says the Gemara, why don't I just say that the halacha is like the mandamar that says that there is no zika, even in one brother? Say that mefurash. Meaning, one more time, I just said this is a concept of zika. We have to bring you this case so that way you understand, right? What's the zika? Rashi was the one that brought you the case of shekidesh etachoto, because in the Gemara it doesn't bring you a case. It just says shomeret yavam shemeta mutar beima, right? Or now we're going to say, right, what happens with a sister? But we're trying to understand the concept of zika or en zika. Is there a connection or isn't there a connection? So now here the Gemara says, why don't you just say the halacha is that there's no connection? It says no. I would have thought if you only told me that there's no connection if there's two or more brothers, but if there's one brother, there's the connection. Says the Gemara, so say mefurash. Halacha is that there's no connection even if there's going to be one brother. So says the Gemara, iyamar hachi. If I would have said that havamina, I would have had the havamina that afilu mechayim, that even if it would have been during the lifetime, which means en zika, which means that the Yavam could get married to the Yevama even during the lifetime of the Yevama when she's still Shomeret Yavam. Meaning, if I would have said en zika, I would have thought that right now this person could get married to the mother even if the sister-in-law didn't die. Meaning, even if the Shomeret Yavam didn't die, I would have thought mechayim. Right? That's what I was. If you say en zika afilu bechad, there's no zika. What does zika mean? En zika means there's no bond. So for, even though she's waiting to get married to you, right? Not to you, but to somebody, whoever it is. Even though she's waiting for that, what happens is that all of a sudden, what happens is that there's no connection. So there's no connection. Even during your lifetime, he could come and he could get married to the mother or the sister, whoever it is. So it says the Gemara, Kamashmalan comes to teach you lachar mita'im, only after death. Yes, mechayim lo, but not during lifetime. Mishum te'asur levatel mitzvat yevamim. Because there's a prohibition to get rid of the mitzvah of yibum. Meaning here, if you would have come and you would have done this, that you would have got married to the mother or whoever it is, right? So now you just annulled the yibum, right? You just annulled it. Now that's it. You can't do yibum anymore. You just got married to the mother or to the sister, whatever it was. if you're not libum. So because there's an isur, that's what we're saying, it's a sur levatel mitzvah yevamim, we're going to come and we're going to say this halacha. Okay?
But in any way, becoming.
So now ask the Gemara, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah later on in Memtet Amud Aleph 49a, Yevimto shemeta, a Yevamah dies, mutar ba'achota. It's going to be permitted to get married to her sister. So 1 second, says the Gemara, ba'achota in, b'imalo. You're only allowed to get married to the sister, not to the mother. So therefore, this is, if it's like Ravuna, it should be permitted even to the mother. Why do we say only permitted to the sister? So one more time, we have a Yevamah, the Yevamah dies, right? What happens when she dies? Now a person is allowed to get married to her sister. 1 second, but only the sister, not to the mother. So answers the Gemara, no. Even to the mother is permitted. But since the reisha of that Mishnah was talking about ishto shemeta mutar b'achoto, that a woman that dies, so now the husband's allowed to get married to the sister. Remember, the sister is the one that you're not allowed to get married bechayeha in her lifetime, but after her lifetime, he's allowed to get married to the sister. So a person is not allowed to get married during her lifetime to two sisters. But if one dies, he's allowed to get married to the sister. So he says, ba'achota in b'imalo. Tehavle isura doraita, but that's an isur doraita. So Tananami, so too, Seifa, we learned ba'muta ba'achota, and even though it's wadin be'ima, right? It's the same halacha be'ima. For example, a mother-in-law, it's always going to be prohibited, even if it's not in the lifetime of the wife or not. It's the sister which is permitted. But the mother-in-law is a mother-in-law. Mother-in-law became a suegra, that's it. Became, right, belmer, that's it. There's nothing much to talk about. Okay? Next, Rav Yehuda comes and he says, Shomeret Yavam Shemeta, Asur Beima. Rabbi Yehuda argues on that which we just said before, Ravuna, and he says, Shomeret Yavam that dies, it's a sur in the mother. Alma Kasavar. So according to him, you see that he holds, yes, that there is a zika. So says the Gemara, so why didn't he say that? Just say that according to Shtat Rabbi Yehuda, he holds that there is zika. What does it mean there is zika? What do you mean there is zika? That there's a connection, there's a kesher. So I answered the Gemara, if he would have just said, Talachaz like Yeshtika, I would have thought to say that it's only going to be that there's a kesher if there's one brother, right? Aval betray, if there's two or more brothers, and zika, there's no zika. So therefore, that's why we just said that the halacha, just like we did in the first time around. So therefore, that we didn't say halacha is zika. So says the Gemara, says 1 second. But what are they arguing? They're only arguing if there's going to be two of them. So therefore, he could have just said halacha k'divrei omer yes zika, because that's when there's going to be the machloket. But if he would have said this, says the Gemara on Yudchet Amud Aleph 18a1, Havamina mechayim. I would have thought that that's only going to be during the lifetime. Aval le'achar mita, but after lifetime, meaning after death, pakala zika. There's no zika anymore. Kamashmalan comes to teach you the zika bichti lo paka. That zika is not going to be without anything, right? It means basically the zika does not remove itself, and therefore there's still going to be a zika even though she died. Okay? Mezat Hashem, we continue this afternoon.